Okay, where we're going to start off today is by showing you the Cognos suite of products that's been purchased by Waterford Hotel Group. We're going to start off from the aspect of a general manager going into the system and actually completing a forecast and looking at his budget as well as his current numbers. Right now I'm logged in as a administrator within the system, and I can actually see all the hotels within the organization at this point and see where they are as far as the forecasting process. I can see which ones have started their forecast, which ones have actually completed it and submitted it to their manager, and which ones have actually not even touched them yet. We're going to go over here to the Gafton Hotel, which is just a dummy hotel that we've created with some information in it. So this is not Waterford-specific data, and it's also not Waterford-specific formatting of the templates that you see. So we are customizing this to Waterford-specific information. So when you take a look at this, please keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Gafton Hotel to open up the forecast for that particular hotel. While this is opening, we'll talk about security for a minute. When a general manager logs into the system, he will only see the applicable properties that he's responsible for. So if you are a general manager for a hotel, you're just going to see that one hotel when you log in. You won't see the others within the area. When the template opens here, we have it split up into different sections. We've got revenue sections as well as expenses. I'm going to start off in the daily revenue tab, and I can make changes once I take ownership of this data. This is a very simplified daily revenue forecast. The way this is laid out is the model thinks we're in April of 2013 at this point. So January through March are actuals that have come through the system and have been posted automatically into Cognos in the back end. What we're asking the managers to do is give us an updated forecast for April at least, and they have the ability to actually go all the way through the end of the year if they want to. And I've got this expanded out right now so I can see the April day-by-day forecast. And this, like I said, is a very simplified forecast model. This has got transient and group rooms sold. The columns in gray have been populated for me automatically. Those are the transient and group rooms sold for the previous year for the same day. So I cannot change those values, but what I can change is anything on the screen that's got a white background. So for instance, I can come down to the end of the month, and I can change my transient room sold for April 30th from 78 to 80, and maybe I want to change my group from 20 to 16. When I calculate this spreadsheet, what it's going to do is it's going to recalculate my room revenue for that day. It's going to recalculate my occupancy percentage for that day. And if I scroll over to the right, I've got my rates, which I can also update if I want to. But if I can see over here on the right-hand side of the screen, it's actually recalculated my room revenue for that day. And it's actually consolidated that up and recalculated the entire month's room revenue as well automatically. I didn't have to run an update process. The system has automatically changed that. And you'll notice a bunch of these numbers are in blue. Those are the numbers that I've either changed directly or that I've impacted based upon changes that I've keyed in. This also carries forward to the expense side of the forecast as well. So if I jump over to the rooms department expense forecast, I can see that some of these accounts have turned blue, which means that I have changed indirectly the amounts that are being forecasted for those accounts. For instance, if I come to the clerks and cashiers account here, it says off to the right that this is being driven off of a $1 per occupied room driver. And that $1 per occupied room is $2.62. The $2.62 I can update as a manager to adjust that up or down. And I can see that that I budgeted $2.52 per occupied room. What I did last year for that account is $2.57, and what I did last month actuals was $2.38. So I can actually adjust this up or down if I want to. So I'm going to adjust this to $2.40 and hit enter. When I do so, it's going to recalculate my forecast again. All of my expenses re-verified, and now I'm at $12,775 for that account. I also have the ability to put comments on anything that I change as well. So here I can put in a comment that describes maybe why I changed that rate within the system. And not only can I see my own comments, but anybody reviewing my hotel can see those comments as well, and they trickle up in reports. So if somebody at corporate is looking at the clerks and cashiers account, they can actually drill on that account and see any comments that any of the GMs put on that forecast for that account. So basically you go through each one of the templates, fill in your expenses and your revenue, and ultimately all of the data rolls up to a consolidated level, which you can look at on this other tab, and rolls up month by month all the way down to net income, net cash. So I can drill in on any of these data points that I want to, that have got a plus sign next to them, and drill down and see individual detail of individual accounts if I want to. Basically what this is telling me is that as of right now, if I were to submit my forecast as is without making any more changes, I'd be at a $4,410,000 net income for the year. Okay, but I want to go in and possibly change some of these numbers to do some what-if scenario planning. I want to know what if I went and changed my occupancy percentage by 10% for the month of April. What would that do to my net income for the year? But I don't want to necessarily change the numbers that I've already keyed in. I want to create another scenario that I can compare to very quickly. And I can easily do that with this tool. It's already built in. The first thing I'm going to do is save the data that I've keyed in at this point. So I'm going to go ahead up here and click the Save button. And the next thing I'm going to do is create what's called a sandbox within the system. And what a sandbox does is it copies the data off to a personal workspace that I can then utilize and play around with and compare the numbers between my sandbox version and the version that's actually going to end up in my forecast. So I'm going to just put a new test sandbox here and hit OK. And when I do so, the screen comes back and it now tells me I'm in the test sandbox up top. So anything that I key in from here on out will just affect that test sandbox. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to the daily revenue tab. And I'm going to say, I'm going to adjust my rooms sold for transient for the month of April. Now, I want to increase this by 10% for every day in April. But I don't want to go through and figure out what a 10% increase is on a day-by-day basis. I can actually come here to the monthly total for transient rooms sold. I can right-click on that number and do what's called a data spread. And I can actually adjust that number by a percentage, by a proportion. Any of these spreads are actually built into the system. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click percent change. And I want to tell the system I want to increase it by 10%. So I'm going to key in a 10% change, and I want to add 10% to the total. And if I move this up and click apply, the system will automatically figure out on a day-by-day basis what a 10% increase is. And you'll notice a bunch of these numbers popped up in blue because they were affected by these changes that I keyed in. It re-rolled it up to the new monthly total, changed all my room revenues for a day. And if I jump over now to my monthly forecast, I can actually see how that impacts my net income for the year. So now I'm at a $4,427,803, and I can compare that to what my original forecast was, and I can toggle back and forth and see those differences. I'm not just limited to making changes in the income. I can do it on the expense side as well, and make changes between those two, and then decide which of those two forecasts I actually want to submit to my manager. To submit the forecast to your manager, it's easy as clicking on the button. Once you do so, the forecast is actually locked within the system. You'll notice everything turns with a gray background, which means that it's locked. and no further changes can be made in this template until the manager either rejects it and sends it back to me, or the whole process starts over again. Okay. With that, I'm going to jump to the back-end kind of analyst tool that comes with the system. And here we are going to what's called the Cube Viewer. So this is something that, somebody at corporate could use to analyze or slice and dice the data and create reports. Here I've opened up the Cube Viewer, and I've got the different dimensions, if you will, that I can analyze the data by that I've just updated. So here I'm looking at a version which I've got, forecast, actuals, budgets, etc. I've got all my properties that I can include on my report. I've got a year. I've got my full account structure, so my whole chart of accounts. I can drill all the way down to individual account numbers if I want to. I've got months, and I've got dollar amounts, or units in this case. And let's say the analyst wants to figure out some analysis over the last couple years, forecast to actuals for all the hotels for net income and net cash. Well, you can easily do this from the screen without having to get a report writer involved or anything else. You can just move these columns around real quick and do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is go in and pick the accounts, if you will, that I want to include in the report. The next thing I want to do is pick the properties. So I'm going to click and drag and drop this down so that I can make it be a row, and I'm going to go in and pick the properties that I want to include in my analysis. Okay. When I do so and click OK, you see it automatically recalculates for me. Maybe I want my property first and then the account. So I'm going to click and just move that to the left. It's going to quickly swap that for me. And now if I want to see for multiple years by month, I can click this and drag it and drop it down. So I'm going to go and pick year, drop it next down to this month dimension, and I'm going to go in and pick 2011, 2012, hit OK. You see very quickly that I'm changing up my report without having anybody in IT involved, without a whole lot of effort, if you will. So now I want to bring in my forecast versus actuals. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to pick forecast and actual, and I'm going to get rid of everything else, and it's going to recalculate for me. So let's say I've done this report now, and now I want to create an Excel report with this data. I've got a couple different options here. The one I'm going to show you in this video is called an active form. You click it. It copies this data to Excel, and it actually creates a linked report back to Cognos behind the scenes. You'll notice these DBRW formulas are actually formulas, and they're not hard-coded numbers, which means that you can create templates within Excel that have the formulas in them, and you can just simply open up those templates month after month and recalculate them, and the data will be refreshed automatically in Excel. I also have the ability within Excel to double-click on any consolidated element and drill down to the details. So for instance, I just clicked on net income. I can see the accounts that roll up to net income. If I wanted to see more information on adjusted GOP, I can keep drilling down and see that information within the system and get down to a level of detail. I also have the ability to drill to individual account level detail if you have it loaded directly from Excel into another system. Okay. One other thing I want to show you really quickly before we move on is the ability to do adjustments at a high level. So let's say you've completed your forecast for the month. A corporate is reviewing the forecast. They want to make adjustments at the top. Corporate has the ability to go in here on an account-by-account basis. And for instance, we're looking at a repair and maintenance account for all hotels for the month of April. They have the ability to come in here and say, okay, this $12,887 is too high. We actually want to adjust it down by 20% they can actually do that right from the screen using that same data spread technology that we talked about before. We want to reduce it by 20% here. And when I click apply, you'll notice the system automatically changed in proportion to what it originally was and adjusted it down 20% total, reconsolidated it, so now I'm at $10,310 for the month. So that was done without having to contact each one of the properties and have them change their forecast. It was just done automatically up at the corporate level. So, of course, you've got to have security access to do that as well. One last thing we want to show you for this video is the integration with the dashboarding solution. So the Cognos BI platform integrates with this data sitting back in these cubes behind the scene. So this dashboard that we've created gives you just a generic view of something that we think that the regional vice presidents may look at for their region. So we've created these quadrants on the dashboard that give additional information. So we've got one that lists gross operating profit by quarter for the different regions that are color-coded. We've got an occupancy percentage by region. Over here, we've got a top 5 properties for the company as of this point in time. I've got an average daily rate analysis by quarter, by region. Down here, I've got a total overhead expenses, and I can actually drill down on these if I want to. So if I wanted to see just for the North region and the hotels that roll up to that North region, I can actually click on that North region link, and it's going to change all my graphs and all my data to just hone in on the North region for me. So I'll come back. I've also got some links to other reports that I can run directly from my dashboard over here. And I've also got links over here to my top 5 priorities that actually goes out to the STAR data and actually lists information for it. So if I want to see detail around the West End, New York City, and their occupancy rate, I can actually click on that, and it's going to actually execute a secondary report behind the scenes that lists out all their STAR data for the month and the quarter, and gives you a bunch of analysis opportunities of figuring out the occupancy percent versus the comp set, the ADR, RevPAR, and then it gives it an analysis with some color coding at the bottom that lets you know whether it's favorable or unfavorable for the hotel against the comp set. We also give the ability on this report for the hotels to look at other hotels within the company. And, of course, that is completely configurable. You don't have to open that up to everybody, but they have the ability to do that as well. So this concludes a quick video overview of some of the functionality that you guys are going to see here in a couple months. And we appreciate the time. Thank you.